Hello, my friends, and welcome back to 10 more awesome games that you might not have heard of. So with the Steam Winter Sale just having started, it seemed like the perfect time to do another of these videos, which people have really enjoyed in the past. So whether you're looking for holiday presents or just want to learn about some games that are on sale that you might not have seen before, that's what we're going to do today. Just like with the previous videos, I've picked 10 games that I think deserve more attention. They range from deeply interesting to challenging tests of strategic mastery to fun and relaxing, or even incredible artistic achievements. And these are all games that I enjoyed a lot that I think you might enjoy as well. As always, I'm not sponsored or anything for these recommendations. These are just games that I genuinely really liked. And also, as always, if you want to see more recommendations, the games that I talked about in my previous videos are of course still incredible and likely on deep discount as well, so I'll link those videos in the description below. All of these games are on sale, and I think worth the value, though of course you have to make that determination yourself as to whether it's worth the cost of the game. And without any further ado, let's get into it. We're going to start with King Arthur Knight's Tale, a dark fantasy tactical RPG with fantastic atmosphere and pretty deep tactical gameplay. As you can see here from the screenshots, I think that this game has really nailed the visual style. They've really managed to achieve Gothic fantasy the way that it should look and feel, and the music and characterization and everything really support that as you play through the game. And the environments and enemies that you face are appropriately twisted and weird and terrifying, all supported by a pretty solid game system. There's a lot of different systems that go into this game as well. Not only are there the classic small unit tactics gameplay where you have to overcome various enemies and challenges and turn-based combat, which is generally quite well done, but there's also a base building element, an alignment system that determines which characters you can recruit, whether you want to follow more the path of Christianity or worshipping the old gods, or whether you want to follow the path of righteousness or tyranny, determines which characters are available to that playthrough. So there's some replayability there and different interesting combinations of characters, and then a base building element as well that really makes it feel a little more like XCOM in the sense that you are building up your base, leveling which characters you want to bring in and deciding how you're going to construct your teams, leaving characters out for training and injury and so on. So there's a management element as well as pretty good tactical gameplay. Where this game really shines though is in the visuals and atmosphere. The writing is solid on the whole, though unintentionally hilarious in a couple spots, but mostly does a very good job of selling the dark fantasy tropes that this game is going for. You're playing as undead Sir Mordred back from the dead to defeat the corrupted reincarnation of King Arthur. So there's a lot of Arthurian legendarium in the game, though it doesn't follow the Arthurian tales exactly, of course. And while dark fantasy often tends to mean low magic, this is actually more a high magic setting. You're playing in the lost land of Avalon, and there are wizards casting fireballs and ice storms and teleporting around the battlefield, and zombies and sylvan enemies coming back to fight you. So it's, I would say, more gothic fantasy in general. What I really like about this game is just how detailed the systems are and how good it feels to play. Even just running around the environments feels very good, and the enemy appearances really sell how gruesome and weird the world that they're building is. The gameplay remains really fun throughout most of the game. It does get a little repetitive at the end once you've really figured out the systems, but I found this to be a quite challenging and interesting tactical game. And, you know, I've played a lot of tactical games, so any game that I find difficult on the high difficulties definitely has some depth to it. So overall, I just really enjoyed the way that this game played out, both in terms of the actual gameplay and in terms of the experience and atmosphere. I think that this screenshot does a really good job of selling how cool some of the enemies that you face are. I'll play some of the trailer too, so you can get a sense of the gameplay as it's being played out. The other thing that this game does extremely well is there's a bunch of different classes and also different unique characters within those classes who represent the Knights of the Round Table. And each of those characters has unique abilities and unique combinations of abilities. So even within the same class, a different character can be a pretty different gameplay experience. And how you combine your classes and characters in order to make up your squad really changes how the game plays. So while you can just have an A team that you bring to every single combat and have that be the way that you structure your playthrough, you can also experiment with changing around how you're doing things and end up with pretty varied different tactical options depending on what squads you bring to which encounters. And the game also does a good job of having story encounters with specific characters that are part of them so that you are encouraged to vary your tactics, which is something I always really like in this type of small unit tactics RPG. If you like tactical RPGs, and if you're on this channel, there's a very good chance that you do, I think that this one is just really good, really worth checking out. The game is fun, it's incredibly atmospheric, the story is pretty good overall, and I just really enjoyed King Arthur Knight's Tale. Next up, Clanfolk. Clanfolk is a colony simulator heavily inspired by RimWorld, and you can see the resemblance visually, but also pretty influenced by games like Don't Starve, Oxygen Not Included, and Banished. This is a completely non-violent colony simulator, which I think is just a really cool thing for a game to be. The challenge in a game like RimWorld often comes from enemy raids and being attacked and making sure that you have the military strength to avoid being destroyed by enemies who are coming after you. In Clanfolk, set in the Scottish Highlands in history, it's much more influenced by the real world, and the challenges are things that real world people would face more frequently. Things like weather, fire, starvation, and cold. And it's really cool for a game to provide that type of challenge, let me play that trailer here, without any violence. Not only does this make it great for players who just want to avoid too much violence in their games, it's also just really neat to see challenges coming from something that isn't the same as what every other game does, and it can let you build these really long-lasting, intricate, and interesting colonies where the focus is on the resource management and the interplay between the personalities. Much like RimWorld, this is a story generator game, and so what you get out of it is going to be pretty influenced by what you put into it as you get more and more attached to the people, the families, the area, and the land, and the way that you do things. You become deeply emotionally invested in the stories of your colony and the people who live in it. I also think that the graphics are quite beautiful. This is not easy to do in this type of very stylized two-dimensional top-down art style, but I think that it's very atmospheric. I really like the lighting effects and foliage effects and weather effects that really make you feel like you're there. I mean, things like this thunderstorm just look really cool. And the stress of having something like a thunderstorm or a windstorm or a drought roll in and jeopardize what you've been building is really impactful because of how real it all feels. If you get a huge mechanoid cluster dropping on you in RimWorld, if you've played that game, then obviously that's dangerous, but it also feels somewhat artificial, like the game is coming after you just to disrupt what you're doing. Whereas in a game like this that doesn't focus on combat primarily, it often feels like when things go wrong, it is because of a decision that you made or because of the environment that you're living in, which I think is just a really great feeling for a game like this. So not only do I think that the game is really fun, the survival mechanics are very detailed, the interpersonal mechanics and family mechanics are very detailed, and the game's in early access and continually getting updates. It's been getting updates for several years now, so I feel fairly confident that the developer will keep improving it, though honestly it's in a great state right now and has been worth the time that I've spent on it. The systems themselves are very detailed, and the way that you construct agriculture and food processing and hunting and clothing yourself is all modeled very well. But also it just all feels so much more real and raw and impactful, I think in part because of the decision to make it a non-violent game. It's currently 50% off. It's a real labor of love by a solo developer, and if you enjoy any colony simulator games, if you've enjoyed RimWorld or playing The Sims, then Clanfolk, I think, is a great entry in the genre. Next up, this is probably the most well-known game that I've included in one of these lists, but it's also one of my very favorite games of the last 5 years, Inscryption. Inscryption is a deck-building horror game, which sounds like a contradiction in terms. How can you possibly make a deck-building game horrific? But they have stuck the landing so well in this game that everything about it just works amazingly. The game itself, the atmosphere and the gameplay, and even the card mechanics when you're building your deck are so unsettling and weird that the intended psychological horror aspect of the game combined so well with the strategy of a deck building card game in the vein of Slay the Spire to create something that's more than either of the two would be apart in a way that I just don't think any other game could possibly have managed. Blending these genres seamlessly is just such a remarkable achievement, and Inscryption manages that incredibly. The game places you in an isolated cabin in the woods, playing a card game for your very life. And as you go through, you solve kind of escape room style puzzles while also trying to win the card game. Things that you didn't think were part of the game turn out to be that you thought were just set dressing, turn out to be part of the game. Things that you didn't think could possibly matter turn out to matter. And the core mystery of the game, which remains not entirely explained throughout it, is really weird and interesting to think about. This game is just a tremendous achievement, both in terms of gameplay and in terms of art. I found the actual gameplay really satisfying, and in fact, people found the card game so satisfying that they released an endless mode of what was supposed to be a pure one-shot experience of a horror game. And that just tells you how good this game is in terms of its gameplay and in terms of the things that you will experience as you play it. The game is divided into several chapters, all of which have quite different but thematically linked game mechanics, which also lends itself to an even more interesting overarching story. It's kind of hard to describe this game without giving pretty severe spoilers. But if you like any horror games, if you like any deck building card games, and especially if you like the idea of trying to see how they have put those two together in a way that somehow functions as a coherent game in itself, while making each part more impactful on its own, then Inscryption is just incredible. This game is currently 60% off or 70% off for the bundle of all three of the author's games, which costs basically the same amount. So from a value standpoint, I would probably just get the bundle. Even if you don't end up playing the other two, it costs you barely anything to get those as well. And for a game that's going to be, I think, as culturally important and as impactful on indie game development as this game is, this is really foundational to how a lot of indie developers are thinking about games now. I can't recommend this game enough. Next up, Low Magic Age. Low Magic Age is an implementation of Dungeons & Dragons 3.5th edition as a sandbox adventure. Now, obviously, I love Baldur's Gate 3, and I really enjoy 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, but at my heart, I'm a 3.5 guy. It's more complex, more lethal, and more tactical than later editions of Dungeons & Dragons, and Low Magic Age is a great implementation of it as a sandbox adventuring game. This game is exactly what you expect, and exactly what it says it is. It's D&D 3.5 as a sandbox game, implemented extremely faithfully. The writing is almost non-existent. The visuals, as you can see, are serviceable at best. But what this game does is take one of my all-time favorite game systems and just let me run around doing stuff with it, trying out lots and lots of different builds and character combinations and party constructions, has extensive possibilities for house rules, so you can play with different implementations or different preferences depending on how you want to play the game. It has a huge number of available classes and races and different ways to structure the game, and then it just dumps you into a randomized adventure world to play around and see what happens. This is the type of game that really reminds me of playing games 20 years ago. It is a sandbox world where you, as the player, just go looking for fun, and because the gameplay is so satisfying and so well implemented, the fun is there when you go finding it. This game has been in early access for about 8 years now, but I think that's a little bit misleading because it's really been being actively developed for those 8 years. I've come back to it many times over the period since its initial release, and every time I do, they've implemented a whole additional set of systems, a whole extra set of things that you can do. Recently, they added businesses that you can run, other adventuring parties wandering around the map that you can interact with. There's a whole mission system when you go to various towns, so there's always something to do. And there's a huge number of available enemies. And because it's all built using D&D 3.5, which has as part of its core the ability to construct really interesting and varied enemies, because enemies in 3.5 use class levels, so they're going to use the same systems that your characters use, and you can end up with really dangerous things like an ogre that has 20 levels of wizard fighting you. Then there's just a huge number of possible variants of things that you can encounter and things that you can do. So even though the game isn't scripted and is mostly randomized and sandbox, no two playthroughs are going to be the same, and you will not encounter the same things over and over again. There's always going to be something new to discover. And of course, because you can construct your parties how you want, and you can mod the game system how you want. There's also workshop support, though I don't think there's a ton of workshop mods because the game is pretty unknown. You can really construct your playthrough how you want to. This is not a game that I would suggest spending hundreds of hours in a row playing, but it is a game that I have really enjoyed every single time that I've gone back to it. Every time I'm just looking to explore a dungeon, find something interesting, or just try out a cool build that I thought of, Low Magic Age is a great option. This game is 60% off currently, and as you can see, still getting regular updates. Also, I guess you can get it for 68% off in this bundle, and that's a good bundle of old school CRPGs if you like this type of game. Honestly, that's great value. And Low Magic Age is just a really good implementation of a really good game system in computer game form. Sultan's game. So I've mentioned a couple games that are pretty dark already, but I should mention at the start of this one that Sultan's game gets dark in a much more real and potentially disturbing way. Pretty much every content warning that you can imagine applies to this game, so if that's not something that you're interested in, definitely skip to the next one. Sultan's game puts the player in the shoes of a courtier in the court of a mad sultan, who commands you to do terrible things or face execution. At its core, this is a game about how you maintain your humanity in the face of unimaginable tyranny, or whether you choose not to and instead give in and succumb to the depravity that you see all around you. Each day in the game, you draw from a deck of cards some terrible act that you have to do in order to appease the Sultan. And whether you fulfill those straightforwardly, or whether you find a way to subvert the requirements of this terrible game that you are being asked to play, is the core of the storytelling and the gameplay. The art style, I think, in this game is phenomenal. The premise is awful, but at the same time, kind of amazing. And the way that the game plays out is this intricate balance between stories that are terrible and surprisingly sweet. And I find that the whole thing together gives you this remarkable tapestry of really interesting options and actions, asking questions about ethics and questions about experience and humanity in a way that I have just not experienced from pretty much any other game. It is true that the subject matter can get pretty disturbing, so again, be aware of that. But I think that Sultan's game does a pretty good job of towing the balance of not having these be just excessive for no reason, but instead having the violence serve a purpose in the themes of the game. Um, and if you want to play as a more good aligned character, those options are available. And if you want to play as a more evil aligned character, you can definitely do that as well. Both are dramatic and interesting storylines. The game is extremely replayable. Which characters live and die and how you interact with them can change drastically from playthrough to playthrough. Whether you want to keep certain people alive and side with them as you maneuver the politics of the Sultan's court, until eventually you can figure out ways to escape from this terrible game, either by overthrowing the Sultan and putting yourself or someone else in charge, escaping from the country entirely, or finding other more mystical means of preventing yourself from having to undergo all of these challenges. The game has a meta progression system that makes different playthroughs be quite different as you continue to play the game and you uncover more and more things. It is originally a Chinese game, and the translation I found was very good and is constantly improving overall, though does suffer in some places, especially a little later in the game or with more recently added content. So again, be aware of that. But mostly I found that the writing is actually quite good and the translation is extremely serviceable. What's really cool about this game, though, is just how beautiful it looks and how much you have to think about everything that you're doing. It's a tightrope walk balance of strategy and morality and trying to figure out how your character and how you want to experience this game. Battle Brothers. So I just checked my hours in Battle Brothers, and I have played this game for more than 800 hours, so not surprisingly, I recommend it pretty strongly. Battle Brothers is a mercenary company simulator, and basically the best one available on the market, I think. You wander from town to town, taking contracts and gaining reputation with local officials, hiring mercenaries and outfitting them, both from things that you can buy from the stores in various towns and what you can scavenge off of the enemies that you defeat. Fight wild beasts, explore strange ruins, attack other mercenary companies to steal their money and equipment, and basically just do anything that you would imagine you would do in a medieval mercenary simulator game. The tactical combat in this game is extremely deep and very difficult. This game is unforgiving and takes a ton of and has a sharp learning curve, so you'll often see people who found the game just too hard for them. But if you stick with it for a little bit, then this is one of the most rewarding tactical games out there. I do see some people turned off by the art style sometimes, but I actually like it quite a bit, the stylized, no legs art style, because it looks like a tactical war game, and it also makes it very, very easy to tell what your units are doing and what enemy units are equipped with, and so on. The number of different types of enemy encounters there are and the different ways in which your different mercenary company constructions will interact with them make this game extraordinarily replayable, even without the expansions, but the expansions add even more options and even more cool things. Fights against different types of enemies play out radically differently, and different equipment loadouts and different types of mercenaries in your company can change how the game plays significantly. It's just so satisfying to take this company from nothing to being a combat powerhouse, to take a group of peasants and rat catchers and vagabonds and cripples and turn them into a legendary fighting force. And when you do get the perfect battle brother to sculpt into an unstoppable god of war, then there's few feelings better. This game has some of the highest highs and some of the lowest lows of any tactics game. When you lose an important battle or a brother that you've been working on for a really long time, it feels awful. And I think that is one of the really cool things that this game does, is make you so attached to your units, and the way that they fit into your company and how they interact with the strategy that you're building, that you just really get emotionally invested in every combat. things can turn against you so quickly that this game is just one of the tactics games that really makes you think about every move in a way that I find extremely satisfying. If you get frustrated by losing games, this game is not for you. So I will say this is very much in the losing is fun genre of game. But if you're someone who likes to explore and likes to learn how to engage in more and more powerful tactics and find new secrets and new ways to overcome the challenges that you face, then this is one of the best games out there for that feeling. Battle Brothers is currently 70% off, it looks like, or you can get the entire bundle. I personally would recommend just starting with the base game. There is way more than enough to do in Battle Brothers with the base game, and then if you enjoy the game, definitely add the expansions because they add a whole ton of extra layers, but you don't need them to enjoy the game. If you like strategy games, this is just one of the best ones out there. Next up, something a little lighter, Arcade Spirits. This is a visual novel or dating sim. It's pure, relaxing, cozy game fluff. And it does that very well. The art is extremely charming, the characters are well written, and the visual style I really like. And it's coupled with voice acting that's honestly better than it has any right to be for such a small indie game. Arcade Spirits is set in a world where arcade gaming and arcade gaming culture never went away and is the main way in which people experience video games, which is just kind of a fun premise, especially for people who were around during that era. And it's just a very well done visual novel. If you have played other visual novels, this one is not going to be a shock. It's not doing anything that's revolutionary in the genre or anything. It's just a really good entry in the genre, but that's a totally reasonable thing for a game to be. It's just really fun. The characters are well written. The art style is pretty good overall. And I just found this game quite charming and worth playing if you enjoy this type of game. Game also has romantic and non-romantic paths for every character's storyline, so you can still do all of the stories even if you aren't interested in the romance aspects of the game, which I think is a nice touch for a visual novel because you can still play the game and enjoy it even if that part doesn't interest you at all. And overall, if this is the type of game that you like and if you want to spend just a little bit of time doing something that's not at all challenging and will be relaxing, Arcade Spirits is a great use of your time. Next up, a game that is a little more well known because of who made it, but that I think a lot of people unfortunately missed, Transistor. Transistor is by Supergiant Games, who you've almost certainly heard of. They made Bastion, which is an indie darling, of course, and then more recently Hades and Hades 2, which were smash hits. But in between those games, they also made Transistor and Pyre, and this game, I think, is an overlooked masterpiece. For a long time around when this game came out, I said that this was my game of the decade for the 2010s. Transistor is such a beautiful piece of art that I really think that everyone should try playing this game at some point because it is visually, musically, and stylistically just incredible. Like all other Supergiant games, the strength of this game is the atmosphere, the visual styling is impeccable, the music is excellent, and there are Transistor songs on the Transistor soundtrack that I still just listen to all the time. And that's coupled with also, I think, one of their most innovative gameplay systems that they've put into any game. So if you have enjoyed any other Supergiant games, if you enjoyed Hades, if you enjoyed Bastion, definitely don't forget about Transistor. Pyre is a little more to users' taste, I think, though definitely worth checking out as well, but Transistor is just incredible. I think that the storyline of this game is beautiful and sad. The visual styling is just so good. Every moment that you're playing this game is going to be immersive and impactful, and it really changed how I think about how games can be art when playing this game. It's honestly kind of hard to talk about this game because there's really not that much that I can say other than that this game is a forgotten masterpiece in every sense, from visuals to gameplay to sound. This is just one of my all-time favorite games, and so it's kind of hard to say anything other than this game is beautiful and you should play it. But that is just the case for Transistor. If you like good music, if you like neon-drenched art, if you like poignant stories of love and loss, this game has all of that and is very, very much worth playing. There's really just not much more to say other than that. Play this game. Transistor is on for 80% off, and honestly, it's hard to think of a better deal out there. I've also played it on Steam Deck, and it works great on Steam Deck, and frankly, you just owe it to yourself to try this game. Transistor is amazing. Back in the land of strategy, Fallen Enchantress Legendary Heroes. So this is a somewhat forgotten Stardock 4X game where you explore the map, build your empire, create armies, and finally defeat your enemies. But it also adds some pretty interesting RPG elements to the classic 4X formula. This game is similar in that way to things like Heroes of Might and Magic or Age of Wonders, where you explore the map, but your armies can be led by these heroes and they go on quests, they level up and equip items, and so they are integrated into the overall strategy layer that involves city building, unit training, and finally taking your armies and crushing your rivals. This game is older, so obviously it will show its age in some ways, but most notably, of course, in terms of the graphics, because this game came out in 2012/2013. But I think that it is a really interesting entry in the strategy genre, and if you are someone who enjoys 4X strategy games, Legendary Heroes is a really good game to play, because it really shows you where a lot of more recent games, like the more recent Age of Wonders games, came from. And I think that it does the formula of 4X with RPG elements better in some ways than any other game has since then. The quests are actually pretty in-depth and interesting. The heroes really do feel legendary, and trying to figure out where they can impact your overall strategy and how to make sure that you're continuing to get them levels and items and power actually integrates really well with the strategy layer in this game. And I have, in general, found it to be one of the best implementations of the idea of a strategy game that also has heroes who are basically playing an RPG at the same time as you're playing Civilization, as a core part of the gameplay. So Legendary Heroes is one of the games that sort of first really brought this type of mechanic into the modern era of gaming. Insofar as 2013 is still the modern era of gaming, but I think you can point to a kind of generational shift in how games were built around that point. And it's still, I think, one of the ones that has done it the best. This is a pretty complex and in-depth strategy game. It has a lot of unit counters and unit mechanics and economic management and map management. So, of course, if you're someone who enjoys Civilization-style games where you have to figure out what's going on the map, every battle takes place in a tactical battlefield as well, so there's small unit tactics in addition to Empire Grand Strategy that takes place when you're playing this game. And it very much has the one more turn effect, especially because you're often trying to figure out how to fulfill a hero's quest at the same time as you're waiting for an important building to build, or prosecuting a difficult war, or trying to figure out how to negotiate with a particular enemy. It also has a pretty varied set of factions and units and heroes and leaders, and they all play out pretty differently, which I think is pretty fun as well. You can change the classes of your heroes as well in order to set up your strategy. So this is a game for strategy lovers, and it's one that has kind of fallen through the cracks in the history of strategy games, but it's one that's very much worth revisiting because of how well it does this basic premise. It's currently on for 80% off, so it's pretty hard to, not get your value out of this game because it's very, very cheap and very much worth playing. Also, this bundle, the 60% off bundle with a bunch of Stardock strategy games, I think is very good. Oh, Demigod is actually a game I should definitely talk about at some point. This is a really interesting game as well. But Fallen Enchantress is for the price, I think, going to definitely give you the strategy experience that you're looking for. And finally, Card City Knights. This is a single player card game, but not a deck building game the way that Slay the Spire or something like that is. More of a card battling game in a semi open world where you collect different cards by battling specific enemies, and then put together a strategy in order to advance in the game. This game is, I think, a really interesting implementation of a single player card game, both because the actual gameplay is pretty fun and interesting, and even though this game is a little bit older, not a lot of games have done anything like this. It's played in a grid, and the way that the game is played is by creating these combos by matching cards that have arrows that point towards one another in order to activate them. So you build these chains of cards in order to create really cool combos, or disrupt what your opponent is able to play by removing squares or preventing them from playing cards in certain areas. Which gives it a tactical element as well as a deck building and card battling element as well. The art style is very stylized, of course, but I think really fun. The enemies that you battle are sort of surreal, and you do it in weird locations, and the art kind of reminds me of Scott Pilgrim versus the World, which, you know, is a visual style that I think is really fun, so I really like the way that this game is presented. But what really makes this game so much fun for me is that more than a lot of other single player card games, it really captures the feeling of hunting around looking for the perfect card for your deck and trying to open boosters to find what you want, and finding the perfect super rare card that fits perfectly into your deck or has a uniquely powerful effect that's awesome to build around and changes entirely how you're constructing your whole strategy. And all of those I think are just really fun, combined with the really unique card placement system that has obviously been done in other games, but I think this game has a really fun and interesting take on it that no other game has really captured a good version of. This is just going to be a fun time for any single player card game. It's very casual, but there's also quite a bit of depth of strategy to it, and I think that is really fun when a game manages to strike that balance of being fun to just dip into for a couple minutes, but also something that you can really get into and think more carefully about. It's on for 50% off right now, so it's very cheap, which makes sense because the game is pretty old. But if you are just looking for just a fun game to spend some time on, Card City Nights is a great way to do that. All right, my friends, I hope that you've enjoyed this look at 10 games that you might not have heard of. I've tried to include games that many people probably have heard of, and also games that almost certainly very few people have, and games from a lot of different genres. So whether you're looking for something much more obscure or something a little bit more well-known, whether you're looking for something from the more casual end or the deeper strategic end, there should definitely be something in here for you. As always, of course, if you want more recommendations, go check out my previous recommendation videos. Those games are still, of course, great. And if there are games that you think people who like the games I've mentioned here would also enjoy, definitely leave those in the comments down below. Let me know if you play any of these games and have fun with them. And I hope that you have a wonderful holiday season if you're celebrating holidays around now. And I hope that maybe some of these games help you enjoy those even more. As always, my friends, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.